he likes him a lot better. He's this Pygmalion. I mean, he took this guy from a lump of clay, for God's sakes. He didn't even know how to line up.
Didn't know how to put on a helmet day one. He told us he needed help.
And Stout has turned him into a productive offensive tackle.
All right, we may be on summer vacation from Philadelphia Eagle activity. Doesn't mean we can't talk about them. That's what we do here on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, hanging with you. We've got another voice to add to the mix. He's an educated one because he's only been covering the Eagles for decades. The Hall of Fame voter here in Philadelphia, our buddy Paul Domowitch of the Daily News joins us. How's your summer going, Domo?
I'm not saying a word until you guys promise that I get a free bag of pure bull beef jerky.
There we go.
Huck and Fud. Everybody loves the Huck and Fud.
Everybody loves it, Tama. And happy belated birthday. The Murderers Row of birthdays. June 11th through June 15th. Nick Sirianni, obviously, turning 40. That's a big one. He'll have this wisdom and gravitas once he turns 40, Dama.
I've got T-shirts as old as him.
Oh. All right, Damo, a couple of things that we've been discussing here today, a couple of things I haven't gotten into yet that I want to get into you. One of which was the tight end position. Actually, we did talk about it with Richard Rodgers getting signed at the end of last week. Zach Ertz is still here. And everyone's got their belief about Zach Ertz, and we all know the conversations that have been had between he and the organization and the tearful farewell at the end of last season for Zach Ertz as he was leaving the field. Yet here we sit, and Zach Ertz is still here. Even though they signed Richard Rodgers last week, Zach Ertz is still here. And the tight end coach, which you guys got a chance to talk to last week, said, I've been in contact with Zach and have had phone conversations, and I'm keeping him up to speed. Is there any chance that these sides kiss and make up and that Zach Ertz is a Philadelphia Eagle again this year?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's going somewhere. If it gets to it, he'll be released, but I think they'll be able to work out a deal with somebody like Buffalo where you get some loose change. I mean, it's just not fair to him. He doesn't want to be here. So, the signing of Richard Rodgers, I think, even solidifies that even more that he's going to be gone. So, yeah, at some point here between now and start of training camp, I fully expect Zach to be elsewhere.
Yeah, Damo, Jody mentioned Jason Michael. We got to talk to most of the assistants last week. Your first thoughts on that group, because it is an inexperienced group. We were just talking to Orlando Ledbetter, another Hall of Fame voter, about the Falcons and a new coach and Arthur Smith, and he's brought in more of a veteran coaching staff. He talked Dean Pease out of retirement. Nick's gone the opposite way. What did first impressions of that staff?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it, John. I'd prefer some experience, a little blend of it. I mean, they did keep Stout, which helps. Yeah. But clearly, there was a conscious effort here. I don't know if it was after they hired Nick or regardless of who was hired, the plan was to, go young, go. I like a lot of these coaches, but there is not a lot of experience. I think Brian Johnson's a nice addition, but again, he's never coached a minute in the NFL. Tracy Rocker has, spent 25 years in coaching, 3 in the NFL, which is almost as many as he played. So, that would concern me, except that this clearly is a year of transition, and I think it's going to be a year of transition for the coaching staff as well.
Yes, it's usually a pretty good philosophy when you come to the realization, hey, we need to get younger. Usually that's players, not coaches, but in the Eagles' case this year, it's the coaching staff where they've gotten significantly younger. John and I were just talking about some veteran cornerbacks that the Eagles should at least have interest in, probably not going to work out, cap situation, player not wanting to be here and the like. But that's another position that we've expected something to happen, kind of like Zach Ertz. We're waiting for something to happen on Zach Ertz. We're waiting for something to happen at the CB2 position, the cornerback across from Darius Slay. Anything this week, next week? Are we going to have to wait till week 1 of the upcoming season to determine who's going to be the Eagles' other starting cornerback? What are you hearing the latest about the Eagles and how they believe their cornerback position is right now?
I'm not hearing a whole lot, but I mean, just judging from the way they've operated in the past, I think they're going to wait. I think they're going to see how things develop with other teams once training camp starts. I mean, we could be, you look at when they made the trade for Ronald Darby, they wait until August. They look at teams that maybe have a decent corner that's expendable or that wants to leave or that is not going to play there. I think that's the way it'll eventually shake out here. It's not going to be anybody that's going to knock your socks off. It'll be somebody with experience that they can plug in until they figure out, with some of these younger guys, what they've got. That's the way I see it kind of shaking out right now, like August sometime.
Hey, Domo, I want to talk to you about the offseason work in general. Obviously, the Eagles were one of those teams that scaled it back, talked to the players and said, we're not going to have mandatory minicamp. Other teams said, you know what? No, we're going to have it. And some veterans, if you don't want to show up for voluntary work, great, but you got to be here for minicamp. Do you think the Eagles should have held the line with that young coaching staff, with that rookie head coach, with all those young assistants and said, okay, this is about the young players anyway. So if you're a veteran, if you're Brandon Graham, you're Fletcher Cox, you don't want to come in for the voluntary stuff, great, just come up for minicamp. Do you think the Eagles should have held the line there and move forward with a minicamp type environment?
Yeah. I only say no because of, they've got a young, inexperienced head coach who I think it was important for him to establish some sort of rapport with a lot of these veterans that they still have. And while a lot of the young players have suffered from the lack of 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s this spring, I think the way they worked it out, where they sat down with the Kelseys and the Coxes and people like that, I think will benefit Nick when he gets everybody together. But I just hate this. I mean, it's very short-sighted of the NFLPA. I understand why and they're run essentially by veteran players, and you can understand why they have no desire to be spending their spring, working out a lot.
Yeah.
But it's for a coach like Nick, for a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, it's really bad. I mean, the snaps he missed are going to set him back. I mean, they got a lot of work, and mentally, I'm sure he's up to speed with the offense. But not being out there, not establishing chemistry with your receivers, there's no good that can come out of that.
Let me ask you to further a comment that you just made, because I think you're dead on right. Short-sighted by the players' union. It seems like every negotiation between the players' union and the owners, which, by the way, they just locked in a 10-year CBA that's going to carry them into the next decade. The union always seems to come back to, well, give us less work. They never win a fight over dollars and cents. The owners draw a real hard line on dollars. Any single dollar they can keep in their pocket, they keep in their pocket. But the union wants to come away with something, and it always seems to be, well, less work, less hitting while we're working, less days working, less hours working. And the NFL says, well, if you really want it, we'll cave on that. We'll give it to you. But to me, then you see a reduction in the quality of football over the course of the long year. Is my description of it accurate? Am I portraying it correctly? Is this actually hurting the game because teams are using less time to prepare to play for the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't even an issue when they did the deal last year. COVID after after they missed last spring, completely virtual, the players said, hey, wait a minute, we had a season, we got it in there, it wasn't disgraceful. There were some mistakes that maybe early on that the teams wouldn't have made if they had spring work, but the public probably didn't notice. Why should we have spring camps? So, I don't think it helps the game. I understand years and years ago, and I was covering the team back then in these years and years ago when they used to have no camps, but they also had six preseason games, and things went on forever. So I mean, players kind of worked their way into shape, worked their way into the system. You don't have that now. I mean, you're down to 3 preseason games. These guys didn't have camp, so they're coming in with basically just mental reps, and they've got 3 games to get ready for the start of the season.
Well, speaking of the union, Domo, they had a conference call last week about the vaccination issue. That's a sticky wicket for both sides. They can't force guys to get vaccinated, but the league is trying to make incentives and incentivize it. And actually, from a team perspective, they seem to be putting it off on the teams and saying, you know what, we're going to play the games. So whether you have a quarterback, and you saw it last year in Denver, I forget the kid's name who was forced to play because the whole quarterback group was quarantined. You have these issues where they're going to play the game. So if you can't get your guys vaccinated and they're quarantined or whatever, you're going to be affected, and they're not going to consider that competitive balance. Do you think that's the right way to go, or do you think there is a better way to go, or is education it? There's not much else they can do.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, I am just shocked by. I thought football would have a much higher percentage of vaccinated players because I tend to give them a little more credit for being smarter than baseball players. I have no idea what the vaccination rate is in the NBA right now, but I know baseball's also having trouble. They can't. You're right. They can't make them. They can't do what. I mean, I loved it. The federal judge that upheld the Houston Baptist Hospital system thing yesterday, where they've made it mandatory. If you want to work in our system, you've got to be vaccinated. And they were sued, and a federal judge basically said the lawsuit has no merit, that a private company can do whatever it wants. And the NFL could do whatever it wants. Unfortunately, it has a union that says, no, you can't. They've educated their players as much as you can. I mean, players that say they need more information are just either complete idiots or looking for an excuse. Since I'm on the total opposite side of this whole thing, and you guys probably are too, I just can't comprehend how somebody could not want to get vaccinated right now. There's been zero evidence of danger. You've got the morons that are out there talking about forks sticking to your head and your chest because you're magnetized. So I mean, the only option left to the NFL is to make it as difficult on players that refuse to get vaccinated as possible. Punish them, make them get tested every day, things like that, and then maybe they come around, because I don't know what else. You can't make them, and that's about your only option right now. You can't fine them, you can't cut them. But the bottom of the roster guys are going to get cut if they refuse to be vaccinated.
Yeah, but you can't cut them. You can't say you're going to cut them.
Right. You just got to keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
So
you can't brand it, beat it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what's going on here. There are going to be some guys you're going to say, that doesn't make sense. Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. I love Bruce Arians, because Bruce said, you want to get back to normal? Get vaccinated. He cuts through all the bullshit at any moment. That's what Bruce Arians is able to do.
And Bruce is one of the few coaches in this league, because of who he is and what he just did, winning a Super Bowl, that can basically tell his players, go get vaccinated or you're not going to play. And there will be nobody saying, wait a minute. Nick Sirianni says that. You're going to have a bunch of guys saying, I don't think so, Nick.
Right. You got here 10 minutes ago, and you're going to dictate to me? Yeah, Bruce Arians, a little different stature than Nick Sirianni. I want to get back to the Eagle coaching staff, specific position, and that would be running back. Jamal Singleton not only is trying to replace Deuce Staley, but is also like Deuce, the assistant head coach. He was one of the guys who impressed me when we got our first chance to listen to him and talk about the upcoming season and how his philosophy meshes with Nick Sirianni, which I all thought was all great. But here's the one thing we don't know. How does Nick Sirianni / Coach Singleton's philosophy mesh with the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles? Because there's been enough reporting this offseason about Jeff Lurie just loves to pass. Eagles win a game, and Jeff Lurie calls Doug Peterson in and reads them the riot act because they didn't pass enough. Even though they went to Green Bay and beat a more talented Packer team, you didn't throw it enough, Doug. How is the Eagle running game going to work this year? Well, they're throwing a lot to the guys out of the backfield, but are you actually going to turn it and hand it off to Miles Sanders at all this upcoming season? How is Coach Singleton going to have to get his foot in the door with the Eagles when this seems to be a pass-happy organization?
Yeah, the only thing we can do, and John can attest to this, is you look at Nick's record with Frank in Indianapolis and what they did the last 3 years, what Shane Steichen did in LA with the Chargers. And, their rushing numbers were respectable. They were, I'm talking carries per game, might have been in the top 10, top 15. But what we're going to see a lot of is throwing to these guys. I'm convinced we're going to see screens out the wazoo this year. They've got, the new guy, Kenny Gainwell, and then you got Miles Sanders, who's better than he showed last year in the passing game, as we saw in year one. I think we're going to see these guys, and we're going to be talking a lot more about what they do catching the ball than running it. But they are going to try. And they've got an offensive line which, if it's healthy, is going to be very, very good, and should be able to protect Jalen. But also mixing in the running game takes pressure off of him as well.
Damo, it is interesting though, because if you look at this team on paper. And Jalen Hurts' ability to run the ball himself, along with Miles Sanders, who projects to be certainly one of the better offensive players on this team. I don't want to say run the football, but I do think balance is going to be important for this particular team more than most, because you have a young quarterback who isn't the most accurate in the world, or at least that's certainly the perception. It was certainly true in a limited sample size last season. So if you do, and this isn't going to happen, but I'll use this example, Kansas City Chiefs are talking about 20-0, Damo. If they come in here and the Eagles upset them, but they upset them in the wrong way in Jeffrey Lurie's mind, is he actually going to go in that office with Nick Sirianni and say, why are you running the ball with Miles Sanders to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Could he possibly do that?
Hey, as we've seen the last few years, Jeffrey can do just about anything as far as his conversations with his coach. What's I'm interested in with Jalen, and clearly they've got to take advantage of his running ability, because you don't draft a guy like that unless you're going to, you're going to maximize that part of his game. But they also have to do it while they're teaching him. I think he's fine accuracy-wise. We didn't see it last year. But then, you throw in the one thing he did in those 4 starts was throw a ton of balls away, which plays into his completion percentage. It was the one thing that they couldn't get Carson to do, that he was only too willing to do when he had to get rid of the ball. But you come out of an Oklahoma offense, the one thing you have to adjust to is you're no longer making one read and then tucking it under and running. You've got to go through your progressions. Then you can run. Then you can extend a play. So I want to see how he adjusts to that. But, what we're going to see from Jalen, the same thing with Kyler Murray, same thing with Lamar Jackson. You can't play man against these guys. You have your corners and your safeties turn their backs, and linebackers turn their backs to cover somebody. They're just gonna run you to death. So that's certainly going to be helpful to him, facing a lot of zones. even with a guy like Greg Ward. I mean, Greg Ward is not a very good man wide receiver, but boy, can he find a hole in his zone. And so I think we're going to see, I mean, a lot of people kind of want to put Greg Ward out the pasture, and I think he's going to be a valuable part of this receiving corps. I'm glad to hear that, Jody.
Yeah, Jody loves
I'm the president of the Greg Ward fan club. I can't believe how many people don't give him credit for what he's accomplished since he became a wide receiver for this team.
Well, that's because we know, Damo, they're looking to get better at that position. Doesn't mean they can.
Better.
Doesn't mean they can. But Damo knows they wanted to play more 11 personnel. Doug Peterson did, but the receivers stunk. Can't get them on the field. And Greg keeps outplaying the receivers as long as he does that. But they want Travis Fulgham out there. They want Jalen Reagor. JJ Arcega-Whiteside maybe gets one last chance. Quez Watkins, John Hightower. They want more speed on the field. That's not Greg Ward. I'm sorry. That's what the Eagles want. I don't care.
I want production.
I don't care.
There's different ways to skin a cat, and Greg Ward is that for the Philadelphia Eagles in the slot. I rest my case.
I like him too.
Damo, let me get back to the point you were making about the Eagles, and you're going to see guys catch the ball out of the backfield that much more. I'm remembering back off the top of my head, I could look up stats and justify it, but I'm just trying to do it via memory. I don't think the screen game was a big part of Jalen Hurts during the last 4 games of the season. I remember the screen game for Carson Wentz being unsuccessful and him making bad reads and putting the ball where it wasn't supposed to be, and the offensive line not giving him the chance to set it up. The Eagles' screen game was pretty poor under Carson Wentz last year. I'm trying to remember what I felt about the Eagles' screen game under Jalen Hurts. I don't have a grasp right off the top of my head of it being good, bad, or indifferent. It just kind of was, and I don't think it was a big part of it. I think they tried to stay away from it because it can be a difficult play to execute. They were trying to make it easy for Jalen. Why do you think the screen game will work with Jalen Hurts if you think that's the case? They're going to lean on it this year.
The offensive line. I mean, I just think that's why it didn't work so very well last year. If that offensive line stays healthy, I think it's just expands a lot of the things they're going to be able to do this year. Run the ball, throw the screens, throw a lot of those gadget, quick balls outside where you can run after the catch. So, but it all depends on what the only question mark in that line right now is left tackle. But Jordan Mailata started 10 games last year. I don't know what Andre Dillard's going to do, but I mean, I have a lot of faith right now in Jordan Mailata's development. So does Stout, apparently. If everybody else stays healthy, if Brooks comes back and can stay in one piece, same thing with Lane Johnson, this is going to be a very good offensive line. I was surprised. I don't know if you guys saw, was it last week, Pro Football Focus, which is usually a big fan of the Eagles' offensive line.
They had them low.
In the league. I don't see that. I see a top 10 line here.
Yeah, I think the concern is the injuries. And obviously, Brandon at his age and Lane at his age, it's tough to picture them being out there for 16 games. But if they're out there, they're going to be a top 10 offensive line. I agree with you. You mentioned that left tackle position, Damo, and Stout talked to us last week. Did you glean anything from Stout's words? He spoke well about Jordan and Andre Dillard. Anything behind the surface, reading the tea leaves? You think somebody's ahead? You mentioned Mailata.
Yeah. He likes Mailata better. He's this Pygmalion. I mean, he took this guy from a lump of clay, for God's sakes. He didn't even know how to line up.
Didn't know how to put on a helmet day one. He told us he needed help.
And Stout has turned him into a productive offensive tackle. So, I also was, I was impressed by, we talked to Dillard last week too. He sounds like a guy who gets it now and realizes he needs to come back in it with a different mentality. He's worked hard. He's stronger. But I still, if I'm a betting man right now, and you're asking me who's going to be the season 1 starting left tackle and who's going to be either the swing tackle or a trade waiting to happen, it's the second would be Andre Dillard.
All right, Damo, I guess I'm fascinated with the running game, and that's why I'm going back there again and a question about Coach Singleton. This is something that I haven't understood for the last several years. We're going back to the Chip Kelly days, not just Doug Peterson, but Chip Kelly as well, because of Deuce Staley and his position as the running back coach on his team. Chip would say, and then Doug would say basically the same thing. When asked about deployment of running backs, how they chose, what plays they called, using the running back, well, that was up to Deuce. The Deuce would roll out what running backs would be on the field on any given play, which I never quite understood. I wasn't suggesting that Deuce wasn't smart enough to pick the right guys, but if you have plays and schemes that specifically fit what a running back does well or doesn't do well, you would think that the coach who's calling the plays would actually make the decision as to who's on the field. But both the last head coach and the previous head coach had complete confidence in Deuce Staley. Deuce is going to pick the right guy. I'm going to call the play, and that guy's going to make it work. Is Singleton going to have that same kind of gravitas here? Does he have a different type relationship with Nick Sirianni, who's going to be calling the plays? It has continued to boggle my mind through the last two coaches, the relationship between the running back coach and the offensive coordinator. How's it going to work with the new two?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen, Jody, since we're just kind of feeling our way with all of these guys. I mean, we don't know right now whether the assistant head coach title is ceremonial, which it often is, or whether, there's some substance to it. With Deuce, I mean, he had some input, or at least was in the room when they would talk about the game plan. So he knew who needed to be out there when they were running something. And my guess is, at least early on, that these will be decisions. Running backs, that'll be the personnel out there will be Steichen and Sirianni, as opposed to the running backs coach.
Jamal talked about traits, Damo, and he said you need traits, and you need the runner, the first and second down runner. You need the pass receiver. You need the pass protector, which is 100% right. We all know that. But if you need three guys to do three different things, how much more difficult is it to run your offense? If Kerryon Johnson's in there to pass protect, but he's not good enough as an outlet receiver. If Gainwell's out there to catch the football, and if Miles is obviously first and second down, doesn't that hamstring you by nature?
Yeah, well, I always go back to 2017 when they brought in LeGarrette Blount, and his role was pretty clear. He was going to be the first down guy, and he was very productive at it. And they didn't try to use him in the passing game. They didn't try to use him much on third down. I think when they paired down, I mean, in Gainwell and Sanders, you've got two guys they think they can use in tandem because they can move them into the slot. They could do a lot of things with them, more so in the passing game than the running game. Neither one of them are inside runners, though, especially Sanders. I mean, he is not the one area he has not impressed me yet in 2 years in this league is his ability to go between the tackles. He doesn't even want to go between the tackles. He bounces everything out. So, I don't know. Is it going to be Jordan Howard? Are they going to have to go get somebody else for that first down role? I think you need somebody in that role. Doesn't mean you need to use them a lot. You can still, line up on first down with Sanders or with Gainwell. But you at least have to have a thumper. And I don't know who it is right now because I'm not a big fan of Howard. I don't think he's got much left. So we'll see.
All right, Damo, my last question, I'm going to give it a little cover here because it's a bit of a tricky question. It doesn't necessarily have to be because someone does something foolhardy. It could be tremendous work ethic. What Eagle player between now and when they report for the first day of camp is going to do something that is going to cause them to miss training camp time, maybe even seasonal games? It can be the fact that they're putting in 10-hour days at the gym, that they're working so hard, that they're so motivated, or they could do something stupid. You don't even have to give us details. Just who is the most likely player to do something. Hey, we're rooting for it for other teams so we can trade Zach Ertz, right? Well, the Eagles could do the same thing. What player is most likely going to do something?
Damo's been around for a long time, but I'm going to be impressed if you can come up with this one.
Come on, Damo. I got faith in you, buddy.
You're asking me who's like the biggest knucklehead on this team, man.
And or the most hardworking, so motivated they're spending their life in the gym, and they actually throw out a bicep because they're working out that much.
Boy. That's a tough one.
I made you uncomfortable with the question.
I think somebody's
the host is an a-hole. All right, I admit to it. I cop to it. My fault. My bad, Damo. I didn't want to put you on the spot like that. I really did. That's why I did. But I will back off and rescind the question.
I gotta go Hall of Fame last for me, Damo, because we had Dion earlier. He talked about Tommy Novus as Mr. Falcon. Should be in the Hall of Fame. What's your take on that? You're in the conversations. You've been in the conversations. When you have a team that hasn't had a ton of success, like the Falcons had over the years, but there are guys, Claude Humphrey finally got in. Dee brought up Aeneas Williams, had a lot of bad years with the Arizona Cardinals. How do you kind of weigh that when you have great players on bad teams?
I've been a selector for 20 years, John, and it's been one of my gripes is that they punish players from bad teams. I mean, you look at the Hall of Fame, it's loaded with Packers from the 60s and Dolphins from the 70s and Steelers from the 70s. And I'm not shortchanging those teams, but my God, there's a point where there are better players on teams that were bad. Like you mentioned, Claude Humphrey. I mean, he was a classic case. I don't know who this year. I just know. I've been trying to get Eric Allen in for several years now. He's finally made the semifinals. He's made it to the final 25. But he played for a great defense when he was here in Philadelphia. But after that, he went to the Raiders and he kind of fell off the radar with a lot of people. He doesn't really have any coaches. Buddy Ryan's dead. Jeff Fisher doesn't seem inclined to want to talk about him. There's nobody to speak for them. So I don't, but there's a lot of those kind of players. I mean, Harold Carmichael is a classic example. He's finally in. He'll be inducted. He was inducted, he went last year and will be inducted in July, or August. But there's so many of those guys that suffer because of the prejudice towards good teams. So it's hard to pick out one because there are a lot of them.
Damo, keep fighting a good fight for Eric Allen. You have my backing and agreement. The guy was a Hall of Fame level cornerback.
Real quickly, Cody. I mean, this year the big, and I have no say in this because it's going to be picked by a separate committee. But they have a coaches category now, and they've put in three or four over the last 2 years. So this year it kind of comes down to Dick Vermeil and Mike Holmgren. Both are going to get in at some point in the next 2-3 years. But Dick's 85 years old now. I don't know if age should be taken into account, but I think it should in this case because Mike's 72. He could drop dead tomorrow, but I mean, Dick belongs. Anybody remembers that team? Anybody remembers the Rams? What he did with the Rams. He belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I'm hoping that happens this year.
All right. I feel much better about asking Damo the tough question because he went drop dead tomorrow all on his own. I didn't push him into that one. He went there all by his lonesome. Let that be noted.
We're all old guys. We talk about people dropping.
We know. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, you got to work on that gray a little bit. Yours is still black. How the hell you still got black in there? And McMullen and I just have pure white at this time.
I gave up. But we're all day to day, Jody. We all know it. So you can say it.
Damo,
Dick and Mike, belong in either way. So
agreed. Damo, good stuff. Thanks for coming on, buddy. We'll tap into you again as we try and make it through the summer. Thanks for giving us Eagle Thoughts today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Damo.
Take care.
Paul Domowitch, Daily News, Inquirer, Hall of Fame voter. And he or John or I could all drop dead today. Right. And then it'd be a whole different Birds 365 show tomorrow.
But it'll go on.
Doing it by himself.
It'll
good luck with that.
Oh, no.
Me doing it without McMullen. Really good luck with that.
I was assuming I would be the one dropping dead. But you are getting blood work.
I'm getting blood work done today. I could get a bad needle. You never know how this is going to go.
You never know.
And we got almost 22 hours before we got to do it again. We'll take a quickie timeout, come back, put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.